Thank you, Sanal. Well, my timer is already off. So I'm Andrei Chirila. I'm software engineer in test at Google in Zurich, and we worked with coverage for more than 1.5 years, and now we're ready to share some of the numbers we have. So I'm going to go a bit through the code review at Google, because it's important to understand, and given that both Karen and Annette mentioned code reviews, I'm going to cover it a bit, define what test coverage we're meaning at, because we have multiple times, and then get the numbers out and maybe start a discussion with you. I intend to use 10 minutes and 5 minutes for Q&A. So Google Core Repository, you know that we open source the fact that, yeah, we have only one big repository, except Chrome and Android, that are separate. And development happens only at head. And we develop in multiple languages. And yeah, with such a repository and a commit every 3 seconds, and it said this morning, we have changes that go throughout the code. So you can have UI, and in the morning you've had something, and in the meantime, all the components underneath have been changed. So with this in mind, you might be asking yourself, okay, so that means that the build for Google Free, it's always broken? Well, funnily enough, no. And this is not in small part due to the code review process. Oh, this is the wrong button. So code review happens in Google before check-in. This really makes sure that we don't break stuff. It's web-based, streamlined, so you can use it on your commute home, early in the morning, it doesn't matter. It's very cool for small incremental changes because it shows exactly the 2 lines that have changed and you can go in. And it's mandatory. So there's no code change that goes in without code review. And I see a couple of you nodding, yeah. And it's helped a lot by automated analysis. So the analysis, what does it do? Well, from the very small, simple stuff, like style guide compliance, just to make sure that all the code looks the same. You don't go in another team and you're not able to read the code anymore, until doing the tests and running the tests for that path. Again, one single repository, there is a system that figures out the dependencies behind to run the minimum amount of tests that would ensure that your change doesn't break the stuff. So it also has to be kind of fast. So in Google, first response for a review comes after 4 hours. So that's the average. If you're working with someone near you, yeah, that's half an hour or so, but otherwise, that's the average in Google. So how do we fit test coverage into this? Well, we don't fit it yet. We said about reviewers, and we have 2 types of reviewers. One is for ownership. That is the person that owns that code and has most knowledge of that code, and readability. That is style guide compliance. And the reviewers will see the results of these automated tools. And this is pretty cool because we are able to see as reviewers, okay, the tests failed for this. You can send back a CL and say, sorry, I'm not going to review until you fix the tests. And that also speeds up the process. And then you end up with the question, okay, how many tests should I write in order to get something done? How much does the reviewer have to see in order to say, yeah, okay, this is fine enough, go. And here we have tools that help us, and also for code coverage. So for code coverage, we are speaking mostly about statement coverage in this presentation. Function coverage, it's pretty easy to get, no matter the language support, because you can hack into the language and get the function numbers. Statement is something that has support both in native and also with some tools, like for Java with AOP, aspect-oriented programming. Branch, we haven't sorted that out yet. So we're getting results for some languages, but some languages we don't. And there are other ways of measuring coverage. For example, UI to code mapping. There are some teams that are working with research in that direction, but they're not yet there. So based on statement coverage, we have two options in Google. Both are opt-in. One is per project. So we're running code coverage on the whole project once a day, for example, and the results are looked at by the project team. And the interesting part is that people seeing these results set objectives for the next quarter. Okay, we have to reach this number or this number. But the question is, okay, what's that number and how does that work? And per commit, that is, every change that goes has also coverage results. And we've done this for more than 1.5 years within Google, so projects that opted in. And we have more than 1,000 active projects monthly. Google is huge, so we didn't manage to get everyone in, but we saturated at least the users that use the continuous test systems. And this is our conclusion. So basically, what we did is we looked at the numbers and we say, guys, the number to be reached is 85%. And why are we able to say this? Well, we have a lot of data, but if we look at any 1 month in the data for the active projects, we see that the median is at 78%. The 75th percentile, so these are the projects that have the coverage-enabled solution in Google. So the 75th percentile for coverage reached there, it's 85%, and 90th percentile is 90%. That means people really care about coverage, but they also need a drive. There are a couple of projects that really need to be pushed through. I'm not able to say how many. Sorry. And based on this, we also did a bit of correlation. Okay, how does coverage relates to language strong typeness? And it's interesting because C++, for example, has lower coverage than Python, for example. The numbers are 53%, 63%, 70%, and for JavaScript and Python, they're shooting 80. So, and how did we get there? So we made coverage available exactly at code review time. This is a snippet how it would look for a reviewer to look at a change. And you can see the green lines where the code is covered by test and the red lines. And based on this, the reviewer can say, sorry, your change is not covered good enough. Please go and write tests for this and this case, because you're not there yet. And this worked pretty well. So we observed a 10% increase in the coverage, computed, okay, the first time you send the review and the moment that change has been sent into the repository. So people are really acting on this. And we're trying to make this even broader available. So that's what we kind of had to share with you. That internally, we're aiming for 85% code coverage. And that's absolute code coverage. There's a difference between absolute and incremental. Incremental, it's per change, and there we're aiming 99%. So legacy code, okay, we understand you haven't written tests. That's the code that you work with. For new code, you should really aim high. Of course, this depends on the language and the support that you have. And there are cases which you just can't cover. You'll have to live with it. Also, the tools that we have really help us push the numbers up. And the better we develop the tools, the better code coverage we'll have. And OK, we're not saying code coverage is the ultimate metric to code health. No, by no means. But it's a good signal. It's something that helps and improves code health. Yeah. And also keep in mind the language differences. There are some languages for which if you don't execute a line, that line can do anything. Think Python. Yeah. Thank you. If you have questions.
Thank you, Andrei. Great talk. So 85 is the magic number.
Well,
Good to know.
it's 86 in the internal memo, but it had to be rounded down for presentation.
Okay, two quick, easy questions. First one, in your code review tool, how do reviewers, since you mentioned it's quick and efficient, how do they ensure they have context for what this change causes? Since that API could be called by any number of places in the stack,
That's true.
does it tie back to them so they can make sure that all the different scenarios actually are
There
used?
is possible to, for example, click on, let's assume asking was a function somewhere. Click on it and go to the code. But by default now it's expected that if you're testing the stuff and that bar is green, like you covered it, it kind of works. So you can jump to the symbols, you can get the full context by seeing the file, but there are small changes, like 1 or 2 line configuration changes, or let's turn a knob here and there. And for those, you're sending the changes to review to people that are familiar with the code. So usually code reviewing within Google, you do it with your team most of the time, and then you have cross-team, which takes a while, and those are longer reviews. Over the ocean, again, time zone takes a time, but people treat code review as part of the process. Okay. So this is part of our job. It's not below code writing, for example.
Okay, so then the second question is, you mentioned that shows code coverage, the coverage number, 85%. Mm-hmm. How do you know that 85% is covering the code that actually matters? Like, does it tie back to scenarios so that you can ensure the story is covered 85% or 100% versus, hey, my number's magic, right?
Yeah, okay. The question is very good, and the trick is the following. We're speaking directly about code coverage. So what you're speaking, scenario or case, that's slightly different. We assume that we are working directly with unit tests. So we're not considering integration tests here. And we also assume that you have the proper setup for this. And we're helping the teams that want to get there, to get the right setup. For example, code that is added new should get directly coverage because it's in certain location, in a certain configuration. But what we're working towards is making this available no matter what your configuration is. So figuring out of the fly, okay, what happens, how this works, which code is relevant for this, and what's the number that we have to deliver to you. Yeah.
Is the code coverage tool, or is the code review tool that you're talking about here, is it open source by chance that other companies could use it?
Not as far as I know. I know that they're working on something, but I'm not able to give any definite answer on that. Sorry. No problem.
Okay.